A wonderful good morning to everyone. Welcome to a new crypto update video. Bitcoin at 77,700 US dollars. It seems like the momentum has already faded a bit again. Well, sure, yesterday we did have a moment where we climbed to just under 79,500 US dollars, but the volume just isn't there. So no one's talking about any liquidations, which really surprises me. When you think about how much people talked about liquidations whenever we had those dumps, like here again, 300, 400 million. And now in a really short period of time, seriously, a very short time, we've gone from 64 to almost 80,000. That's 22%. And somehow you don't hear, here, 700, 800 million in liquidations. Somehow the picture just doesn't quite add up. That's why I still maintain we're still in a beautiful bear flag. In any case, let's take a look now at everything that's happened over the last 24 hours. Of course, we'll also cover the latest news. And just a little reminder, tonight at 7 p.m. I'll be back with a live stream. So we'll take another detailed look at everything this evening as well. Of course, your altcoin requests, stock requests, etc., and so on. All of that at 7 p.m. today. But before we get started, as always, feel free to leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And of course, feel free to join the free Telegram talk and signal group as well. If you're interested in updates, news, and signals, feel free to join. You can find the link for that for free below in the video description. There you'll always get the latest information. Even when I sell stocks or take profits, everything is shared in this group, and of course, it's all for free. So feel free to check it out. It's the first link below in the video description. All right, let's get started. Bitcoin at 77,700 US dollars. As I said, for me, we're still in an overall bear flag. Nothing has changed about that. If we take a look at the volume on the daily time frame, it's pretty much staying the same or even slightly decreasing. But for me personally, there's way too little accumulation happening down here, meaning spot accumulation for a potential bottom. At the same time, as I've always pointed out in the past, we've repeatedly taken out the lows. We can see that quite clearly here before we then broke through to the next rally upwards. We saw this repeatedly in the last bull run, constantly switching the lows in order to, let's say, take the liquidity from the longs, from those who went long too early, and then shoot upwards and possibly set a new all-time high. What we always see here is that we always skim the liquidity at the top, always just barely, never with a real impulsive candle. And I really don't like that at all. Shall we take a look at the traders? Reality indicator, there we can see what's at least positive. We've moved above the 50 EMA on the daily chart. Of course, we're above the cloud. We've even confirmed it again. That's a good sign. The 15, 5, and 13 EMAs are also acting as support, currently valid. The last time we really had that was up here when we were in this B wave and then had the sell-off. That means we're not completely out of the woods yet. As I said, I'm just missing a bit more volume here. And that's exactly what we're seeing at the moment when we look at the spot order book. So we're at 10 million here over the last, let's say, 12 to 16 hours where we had average volume. At times we had no volume at all. Just take a look at that. Sometimes it was really just 2 million, whether it was spot buys or spot sells. But that's just, there's basically no volume being traded here at the moment. The markets are waiting. Let's take a quick look at the news. Shipping traffic on the Hormuz route has come to a standstill after Iran seized the first ships. We're back to 0 ships now. And now Iran is starting to confiscate some ships again. Trump, once again, after Taco Tuesday, has decided to take an extended weekend as a ceasefire, another 3 to 5 days. He added that on top because he's running out of ideas and probably doesn't even know himself what else he should do since no one really takes him seriously anymore. Meanwhile, the energy crisis in Europe is becoming more and more serious. Lufthansa is canceling 20,000 flights. Russia is cutting off gas, or rather through the pipeline that runs through Kazakhstan, or then onto Germany, or should I say East Berlin to be more precise. You can see it's slowly getting a bit more dramatic, but somehow nobody cares. Let's be honest, nobody out there cares. Stocks and bonds are falling because the oil price remains above $100 due to the war in Iran. Yes, that's, if we just take a quick look at the oil price, by the way, WTI is now back at 94, or rather, yesterday or even last night, it climbed back up to 97. That's not what we want to see. Let's quickly check the bonds again. The bonds are rising. That's also not what we want to see. No matter which bond maturity we look at, they're all rising again. Europe has long since gone back above 3%. Japan is still high. And Japan is up next week with their interest rate decision. So basically everything that's happening here at the moment, for me, it's still absolutely undisputed that this is still a fake move. I already posted about it yesterday on Telegram and also on Twitter. If this here was already the completed ABC, or ultimately here, One could have actually said it was a 5-wave move, then we would have had another lower low here, which I personally would have preferred. Then we could assume that this rally could even go between 80 and let's say just under 100K. I'm not really able to get excited about it yet. I'll tell you why. Right now, if we assume that this was the C and we're here in wave 4, we haven't even reached the golden pocket yet. That means basically we still have room up to around 83,000 or 84,000 US dollars that would still be possible before we can fully say, okay, this here will be, and let me just draw this out for us again. This is wave 1, this is wave 2, this is wave 3, then we're here at wave 4, and then wave 5. Finally downwards. Then we would have a nice 5-wave move to the downside. That means it's still entirely possible that we're currently only in wave 4. At the same time, as I said, this whole thing could also be the larger wave A here with a very, very weak wave B, then really pronounced in order to move into the final downward movement. The targets remain roughly the same between 50,000 and let's say 45,000 US dollars. So no matter how we look at it, we're not out of the woods yet. Anyone now saying it's a bull run is absolutely mistaken. 4 out of 6 of our buy zones have now been reached. You can check for yourselves, or rather we've talked about it repeatedly. Bison 1 was completely filled. For Bison 2, at least the first order was filled here at the top edge of the box. That's a good sign, but in my opinion, we're still not out of the woods yet. There's just too much going on in the world right now, especially with recession fears that we still have to consider or talk about, which will probably come sooner or later, because oil and bonds, things can't go on like this. That's the big, big problem at the moment. And as long as there is no ceasefire, we will continue to have problems, at least in my opinion. And as I said, the trading volume as it is right now is simply much, much too weak. There's definitely a bit more power missing behind it, in my opinion. Shall we look at the heat map upwards? For now, everything has been covered. The next levels that will become interesting are coming up. Looking at a 7-day perspective, it would be around $73,000, then also at $68,000 and $60,000. At least that's where the liquidity currently lies for us in the short term. Otherwise, in terms of news today, later in the day, where's my economic calendar? Where is it? Where is it? Here it is, okay. Initial claims, continuing claims, and also the Purchasing Managers Index. That also allows us to gauge in a small way how the economy is currently doing. But otherwise, it's relatively quiet today and tomorrow as well. We have a very, very quiet week ahead of us. Maybe keep an eye on Japan tomorrow with the CPI figures, which could then become interesting for next week's interest rate decision. But otherwise, it really is very, very quiet. The only thing we have going on right now is earnings season, but we'll talk about Tesla in a moment. Otherwise, the altcoins, they're basically moving in step with Bitcoin. We can pull up the Fibonacci level for Ethereum here again. From the top to the bottom, we can see in the end that we're not even at the 0.5 Fibonacci retracement level here yet, unlike Bitcoin. So we still have a bit of room to move up here, which would also perfectly fit the ongoing bear flag. That means the golden pocket is still in play here, filling the efficiency at $2,800. And only then, once we're above that, can we start talking about higher prices. But otherwise, I'm sticking with this view, A, B, C, D, E. And of course, it's the same story with Solana. Although Solana isn't a bear flag, Solana is just a shitcoin at the moment. There's just a lack of liquidity everywhere. Let's move over to gold. Gold looks pretty stable, I have to say at this point. So from a price action perspective, it's a disaster. I actually closed my long up here before my vacation. I already told you about that. Or actually, I think it was already on Tuesday before that. Honestly, I'm expecting a bit more downside here as well to possibly reach the buying zone between $4,000 and $3,600. Last time it missed that by just about $100. Unfortunately, it could also be that the downward movement has already been corrected with that. We'll have to keep an eye on it. I'm still staying completely out of silver. Here, we've now hit the golden pocket perfectly for the time being. So here too, there's still potential to come back down into this green box or to make another lower low, definitely possible. But what also needs to be said, and what I like much better here, is that we're grabbing the liquidity at the lows, but at the same time, we have increasing volume. And that's exactly what I want to see. Accumulation, lower lows with bullish divergence, and then moving in that direction. Possible new all-time high. Then let's move over to the stock markets, or rather, yes, first to the stock markets. And then we'll also get to the Tesla earnings. For me, the DAX is still in wave 5, or the 5th wave. Now, by now, this should even be completed here. It actually played out perfectly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 into the 0, 7, 8, 6 almost filled the gap up here. I would have liked to see that happen a bit more, but otherwise it's running relatively well. The short position hasn't been triggered yet, and I'm sticking with that. Dow Jones overshot a bit, but basically the B is still possible here. Volume is clearly decreasing. It already started dropping last week during this move when I told you that this whole movement just doesn't seem normal to me. ABC. For me, it's still absolutely possible here. S&P 500, this is the correct chart. I'm short again. I already mentioned this in yesterday's video because we're simply in my sell zone up here. The volume is still just terrible in my view, and for me that's nowhere near enough to say, yeah, this is a sustainable rally. I don't like it at the moment, and given the current global economic situation, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, possible recession, rising inflation, all the indicators, including economic indicators, ultimately point to something happening sooner or later, that this is simply an overshooting B wave right now, which will eventually roll over. The volatility index continues to be on the rise, which doesn't make sense if stocks keep going up. I already talked about this in detail yesterday. Otherwise, Tesla earnings, just a quick note on that. They were actually very, very good, I have to say at this point. So if we take a look here, earnings, so EPS, were up about 16% higher, and revenue also increased by another 1.3%. So very, very good numbers from Tesla. This is ultimately also the signal, or rather our bottom here at the fourth wave was perfectly predicted. 5. Now we have to see how high it will ultimately go. I expect that we will move in line with the stock market here. That means Tesla can continue to run a bit further for now. And then we have to see how the whole game continues to play out. Otherwise, once again, because there were a few follow-up questions about Circle. Where do we have it? Here, Circle. Still stable and still the ABC. That means here too, the bottom should not be in yet, at least not for now. Yet. All right, then I would say that's it from my side. We'll hear from each other again this evening, bright and early, for the live stream at 7 p.m. Feel free to join in. Otherwise, I wish you all a wonderful day. I'm in a good mood, you can tell. I'm really in a good mood, and that's even though the prices are so high. But all right, let's see what else happens. I'm confident that sooner or later reality will catch up with the stock market too. That's all from me for now. I wish you all a wonderful start to your day. We'll hear from each other again this evening. Until then, ciao ciao, and as always, stay cool.